want to welcome everybody and thank all of those who are joining us from far and near. And I would like to begin this with the lighting of the candles. We have 6 people who are going to be lighting candles from places as far as Fall River or Israel. And I'd like to invite the mayor to light the first candle. And after that, those of you who did not receive the note, please light in the order that it was sent. And if not, I will jump right in and invite you to light. Ron, you are going second. Dalit is third. Reverend Lima, you are fourth. Marty Benz, you are fifth. And Cindy will light the final candle. And we'll take it from there. I'm going to focus on admitting those people who might be still trying to join us. And without further ado, and every person who lights the candle, feel free to say a word or two. Mr. Mayor, please begin, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Amir. Can everybody hear me? Can you raise your hand just to? Okay, fabulous. You know, I've come a long way, guys. I've struggled with a few Zoom calls over the last few weeks, but it's wonderful to see all of you, albeit remotely. For a moment there, I thought I was going to have to run over to Marty Lippman's house across the street with my mask in hand to jump on his computer. But I'm so thrilled that we're able to do this annual ceremony, which I both enjoy every year, but also derive a great deal of personal gratification from. You know, there are a few things I'd just like to reflect on. One is just a word of thanks to you, Amir, and to Rafi Cantor and Nathaniel and everybody who puts the ceremony together every year. Cindy and Mel Yokin, of course. It's a, you know, in some ways this year's event is you know, more than ever appropriate for the times. I think we're in the midst of literally of a plague, and in a way, in the midst of this, we are reminded of our common humanity. You know, the virus spares nobody, and regardless of, you know, race, creed, religion, and in many ways, it's the way that folks have come together is a reminder of the very, you know, ethic that we try to promote in our, you know, in our annual Holocaust ceremony. You know, we in many ways, you know, have in New Bedford, I think, shown the way as a place that is unusually tolerant and unusually accepting of others, and we sort of take it upon ourselves to be an example. But we also through the work primarily of folks who are gathered on this phone have sought to, you know, reinvigorate, you know, the need to treat everybody the same way, not to forget, not to ensure that we live up to our highest aspirations. So I do want to thank all of you for that. I do, you know, in times past, Cindy has introduced me not only as mayor, but as the grandson of John Kinney, who is my grandfather. My grandfather was a young artillery officer whose battalion was one of the units credited with the liberation of Dachau. So there he was, you know, a 30-year-old from the north end of New Bedford, marching into the camp just this week, 75 years ago. And I've been thinking about him a lot. I'll just note, because I think it bears noting, given the circumstances we're in, that his own father died when he was a kid. His own father was a New Bedford police officer who, as we understand it, is the only New Bedford police officer who died in the line of duty in the Spanish flu pandemic. He contracted the virus as he was removing bodies from houses in the city. And so it's, you know, in many ways, there's an intersection here with his life and time. I do want to say that you know we the effort that that all of us put into remembering and in some ways remembering and articulating the memory, however difficult, however remote, is profoundly important right now. And I think in some ways what we're all doing today is a great example of this. Again, is what I try to convey to the city and to the region generally, that we have a lot we have a lot in common together, that we have to maintain our focus on our highest ideals, and to never forget. And so with all that, I know I've been warned that Zoom meetings should be shorter than ordinary meetings, so I will light a candle. I have in years past in remembrance of my grandfather, John Kinney, good man, a New Bedford kid, and one of the Dachau liberators.
Thank you. Ron?
All right.
Ron, you're next.
Well, thank Manya, Amir, and the Federation for putting this on. And we light this candle on behalf of all those who we lost, as well as the survivors. And we are happy, as always, to be collaborating. That is the Bristol Holocaust Center, collaborating with the Federation in this very important program. So here's to that.
Thank you, Ron. Lead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dalit. I am the Israel chairperson of the Afula Gilboa Partnership, with Southern New England. I'm honored to participate with you today from my home in Moledet and light the third candle in memorial of the 6 million murdered in the Holocaust. This is the candle. And I just want to show everyone that this is my living room, and I just will turn. So I just want to show you, those are pictures of my family, all of them that was murdered in the Holocaust. And this picture, one second, I will show you. So this picture it was taken 100 years ago. This is school, my grandmother at her school in Germany. And she ran away from Germany when she had 3 years. She was 3 years. And no one survived. No, there is no survival except my grandmother that ran away. But this picture is in my living room still today, and they always say that she is part of me, and all the others that I never know them, or those family that was murdered, all of them are part of my life still today. So thank you for inviting me, Amir.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Reverend
Thank
Lima.
you.
Reverend Lima, please unmute if you have to, if you happen to be in unmute.
And I apologize.
Here we go.
It was a great speech. You would have loved it. My wife and I are both here together lighting this candle to remember not only those that gave their lives trying to help, the Jewish people as they were being taken up and rounded up, people of the faith community and others that they themselves were taken. And even those that were considered less than human by the Germans, those that were the gypsies and those that were homosexuals and those that were deemed unworthy. We have come to learn, obviously, that no one but the Creator has the ability to judge any of us. And that especially now, with everything that we're doing to help each other during this time of isolation, this is nothing compared to what people felt back then when they didn't know if they'd ever see family again. And as Dilip just explained, so many are no longer with us. And so we're honored to always be a part of this, and to always say that we will not only never forget, but that we will always be there alongside of the synagogue, the rabbis, the federation, and everyone else to show our support anytime anyone ever shows a word or an action of hate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Many thanks. Marty Bentz.
Assalamu alaikum, shalom to all of you. I am Martin Bentz, Outreach Coordinator of the Islamic Council of New England and the Islamic Society of Southeastern Mass. I'm honored to join you today as a Muslim for this Holocaust Memorial commemoration in New Bedford, Sunday, April 26, 2020. It's also the third day of Ramadan in the year of Hijrah 1441. Today we commemorate the horrors of the Holocaust committed by the not so distant past. We light this candle
Can you take this call?
in honor of those who sacrificed so much.
Just tell her more.
These candles must also light our way to the future, where we can never allow the forces of hatred, oppression, and intolerance take control against any minority of any kind, religious, race, ethnicity, ability, or persuasion. May God bless us and guide us and give us strength in these trying times. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Cindy? Cindy? Unmute. Cindy, are you there? Okay, I do not see Cindy, and considering I prepared for every possibility, I will be lighting the sixth candle right here. I hope you guys can see me. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is me lighting the sixth candle in memory of those who perished in the Holocaust. And thank you, everyone, for joining the candle lighting. I turn this now to Cantor Nathaniel Shudrick, who is going to lead us in a psalm and a prayer as our Daniel.
Thank you. The 23rd Psalm. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Roi Lo Echsar, Binaot Asher Yarbitzeni, Al Mei Menucho, B'Nahaleini. Nafshi Yeshovev Yancheni V'Maglei Tzedek Lema'an Shemo. Gam Ki Eleich B'Geit Samavet Lo Hirara. Ki Ata Imadi שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. ישנת ושמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני, כל ימי חיי. והשבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. Now a memorial prayer for those who perished in the Shoah. El male rachamim shochin b'mromi, hamitzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashechina, b'ma'alot kedoshim u'taharim kezohar harakia mashirim. לנשמות כל אחינו בני ישראל, שנטבחו בשואה, אנשים, נשים וטף, שנחנקו ושנשרפו ושנהרגו, שמסרו את נפשם על קידוש השם, בגן עדן, תהי מנוחתם. אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירם בשאת כנפיך לעולמים. בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם, אדוני הוא נחלתם. ינוחו בשלום על משכבותיהם, ונאמר Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant an infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure. To the souls of all our brethren who perished in the Shoah, men, women, and children of the house of Israel, who were slaughtered, suffocated, and burned to ashes. May their memory endure and inspire deeds of charity and goodness in our lives. May their souls thus be bound up in the bond of life. May they rest in peace, and let us say, Amen.
Amen.
And
This is Manya Bach. I'm the president of the Federation. I'm going to read the list of the camps. Dachau, Sachsenhausen, Buchenwald, Mauthausen, Bergen-Belsen, Stutthof, Ravensbrück, Mittelbau-Dora, Theresienstadt, Majdanek, Auschwitz-Birkenau, Miaue-Trosenetz, Treblinka, Sobibor, Hamno, Białystok, and all those who were murdered in the Holocaust by bullet. We remember them.
thank you, Manya. Rabbi Cantor. Rabbi?
Rabbi, unmute yourself. Rafi, you're muted.
There we go. Sorry. Mourners Kaddish, please rise. Yit Gadal v'Yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah v'Alma Divra Chirute v'Amlich Malchute b'Chaye Echon v'Yom Echon uv'Chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael v'Agalau v'Zman Kariv v'Imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach v'Yolamu Me'omaya Yitbarach v'Yishtabach v'Yipa'ar v'Yitromam v'Yitnaseh v'Yitadar v'Yitdaleh v'Yitalal Shmei Dekucha Brichu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata v'Shirata Tushbechata v'Nechemata Damiran Bialma v'Imru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya v'Chayim Aleinu v'Al Kol Yisrael v'Imru Amen. Oseh Shalom b'Mramav Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. May the one who brings peace to the universe bring peace here on earth to all humanity, and let us say Amen.
Amen. I'd like to invite everybody now in the chat of this message, as well as on the Federation website, is the introduction by Rabbi Heyer and acceptance by Kurt Kleinman of his award for valor by the Simon Wiesenthal Institute last year. We are going to independently, the video should open up in the chat, and if it doesn't, the link is there. Just independently open another browser and watch the video, and after the video, which lasts about 15.5 minutes, we're gonna stay here throughout on Zoom. Ilana Offenberger is gonna manage the questions and answer part that follows. So please do so. If anybody wants to send me a message, if they're having issues of how to do this, underneath you see the chat. There's the link right there. The Federation website is jewishnewbedford.org. It's all there. Please join me and switch to the video right now.
During the roundup and selection of Jews sent to the concentration camps, there have been many heroic stories documented. Stories of desperate parents doing anything to hide their children from the Nazis, hiding them in closets, in barns, entrusting them in the hands of great non-Jews, people they never met. But there are few stories like the one you're about to see of an 18-year-old boy who had avoided the roundups but when he heard the terrible news that his beloved father was taken by the Nazis, he voluntarily turned himself in, not because he didn't love life, but because he did not want his father to be all alone in the world. Please direct your attention to the screen.
When the Nazis marched into Austria in March of 1938, life for the country's approximately 180,000 Jews changed dramatically. The situation went from bad to worse that November during what became known as Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, when Nazi brown shirts, the Hitler Youth, and anti-Semitic sympathizers went on a rampage all over the country, burning synagogues, Jewish businesses, and homes. For families like Tini and Gustav Kleinmans, Jews who had lived in Vienna for generations, an almost idyllic existence turned into a nightmare. Gustav was a successful upholsterer. The youngest member of the family, Kurt, was just 8 when things began to change.
My memories of Vienna as a child are outstanding and fantastic. I had a wonderful boyhood. We were kids. We lived across the street from a market. The market was our playground.
Not long after Kristallnacht in 1939, the Nazis showed up at the Kleinman home.
The Nazis came to the house and were looking for my father, and he wasn't home. As a result of that, they said, "We'll take your son, and if he turns himself in, we'll let your son go." My father came home, heard about that, and said, "I'm going to the police station." And my mother said, "Don't do it, get out of the house."
Kurt's father refused to listen to his mother. But before he could go to the police station, neighbors let the police know he was home, and the Nazis arrested Gustav and took him away. Father and son, along with thousands of other Austrian Jews, ended up at the Buchenwald concentration camp. Kurt's mother, Tini, went into action to do what she could to protect the rest of the family. She managed to send Kurt's older sister Edith to England to work for a family as a maid. And with the help of the Jewish Children's Aid Organization in New York, she was able to send Kurt to live with a prominent Jewish family in Massachusetts. At Buchenwald, 48-year-old Gustav and 16-year-old Fritz were assigned to the quarry detail, back-breaking work where they, along with 14 other men, were forced to push a stone-filled wagon weighing some 4.5 tons uphill, more than 800 yards, being lashed and yelled at by the guards. Writing in a diary he miraculously kept hidden throughout the Holocaust, Gustav described how he and Fritz toiled. "We are proving ourselves," he jotted down. But as they were proving themselves, Fritz, along with other Jewish prisoners, was singled out and beaten after an attempt on Hitler's life. Gustav almost died from dysentery. And then one day, in 1942, Fritz discovered that Gustav was going to be transferred to Auschwitz without him.
They're both in Buchenwald, and all of a sudden he learns that my father is being transferred to Auschwitz. And he went and he says, "I've got to go with my father," even though the other inmates who were friendly with him told him, "You're stupid, don't go, look what's going to happen," and that sort of thing. "If you want to live, you've got to forget your father." And he just said, "There is no way I can forget my father."
Gustav wrote in his diary, as he and Fritz traveled to Auschwitz, "Everyone is saying it is a journey to death, but Fritzl and I do not let our heads hang down. I tell myself that a man can only die once." Gustav and Fritz were sent to a subcamp of Auschwitz called Monowitz. Most of their comrades at Buchenwald had already been sent to their deaths, but the father and son managed to survive because they were skilled laborers. Fritz became involved in the resistance movement, passing information about what was going on with the war to his fellow prisoners and helping others to escape. He even went as far as bringing arms into the camp. One day, Fritz was seized by the SS, accused of planning a large-scale escape. He was lashed 60 times but refused to give up the names of his friends involved in the resistance. Fritz was returned to the camp, but fearing that the SS would bring him back for more interrogation, friends hid him in the isolation room at the camp hospital and then recorded that he had died. He recovered there from his lashing and then reemerged into the camp population with a new identity and a new job as a warehouseman. Father and son were reunited, but their ordeal was far from over. January 1945. The Russian army was approaching Auschwitz. The Nazis evacuated prisoners from the camp, putting them on trains for the Mauthausen camp deep in Austria. On the train, Fritz urged his father that it was the moment for them to escape. But the now 53-year-old Gustav was exhausted and not well. He convinced his son to flee on his own. Fritz leapt from the train but was recaptured and sent to Mauthausen. Gustav was sent to a different camp, Mittelbau-Dora. For 3 months, father and son had no idea if the other was still alive. That May, Mauthausen was liberated by U.S. troops. The gates of Mittelbau-Dora were opened by the Americans a few weeks earlier. Fritz returned to Vienna, to the apartment building where his father's shop used to be. He had no idea if Gustav was dead or alive. He did learn that his beloved mother and youngest sister had been taken away in 1942 and murdered in an extermination camp near Minsk. With happiness, he found out that his sister Edith was alive in England and his younger brother Kurt in America. And then Gustav returned to Vienna to the same apartment building. The son who had refused to desert his father was now reunited with him. In a few years' time, Kurt would also be reunited with his brother and father when his tour of duty as a U.S. Army soldier brought him to his hometown, as well as with his sister Edith. Kurt then learned of his father's secret diary and the exploits of his brother in the resistance at Auschwitz. Gustav died at the age of 84 in 1976. Edith lived to the age of 96, and Fritz died at the age of 85 in 2009. Kurt became a successful pharmacist. He also devoted his time and energy to making sure the legacy of his father and his brother would live on for the ages. Just this year, The Boy Who Followed His Father into Auschwitz, based on Gustav's diary and Fritz's writings, was published to great acclaim. It remains on the bestseller lists in Great Britain, and the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the surviving son and brother of Gustav and Fritz Kleinman, Kurtz Kleinman. On behalf of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, I'm honored to present to you and your family the Medal of Valor.
I would like to thank the Wiesenthal Center for this honor. I accept it with humility, not only for myself, but also on behalf of my immediate Viennese family, as well as my extended American family. Most, if not all of you, have heard of the British rescue operation, now known as the Kinder Transport. You may have even read the book or seen the movie Into the Arms of Strangers, but certainly few, if any of you, are aware that between 1934 and 1945, approximately 1,200 such unaccompanied children from Europe, primarily Germany and Austria, were allowed to enter the United States. I arrived in the United States with two other children, a girl 11 and a boy 14 in March of 1941. We met in Berlin where we needed to pick up additional official documents. We continued traveling together and spent a month in Lisbon waiting for our ship to sail to the United States. 38 other children were supposed to join us in Lisbon, but never arrived. I therefore believed for years, as I grew up, that the three of us were the last unaccompanied children to escape Europe. It was not until years later that I learned that we were part of a much larger group. I became a member of such a group founded by Iris Posner, now known as 1,000 Children, or OTC, as we abbreviate it. Iris Posner, a social scientist at that time, wondered after seeing the movie of the British rescue operation if the United States did anything similarly. She uncovered the story and was able to identify as well as locate 600 of us. Unlike the British operation, she learned that we were not sponsored by any government program, but rather through the intervention of private Jewish organizations. Not all of us were as fortunate as I. Some ended up in orphanages, some in homes where they did not get along with siblings. But regardless, we all survived, and most ended up with successful lives. I therefore share this honor with all my OTC colleagues. I, of course, was very fortunate and ended up with a loving family, Judge Samuel Barnett and his three sisters, Sarah, Kate, and Esther. They treated me as if I were their own. While I always referred to them as uncles and aunts, I always kidded that I ended up with a new father and three new mothers, each one expecting the best from me and not letting me get away with anything. Living in such a prominent household, I could no longer be the Spitzbub or little rascal that I might have been in Vienna. They too deserve to share this night with me. After almost 75 years have passed since those dreadful days described in the two books, The Stone Crusher, which was published in the United States, and The Boy Who Followed His Father into Auschwitz, and that was recently published of our family Holocaust story written by Jeremy Dronfield. Our story of survival, loss of life, and rescue accompanies anyone remotely connected to that period. It is representative of all who suffered through those days and therefore needs never to be forgotten. My father and my brother's experience through 6 years in 5 different concentration camps are living testimony to the realities of the Holocaust and are contrary to the conspiracy deniers. Their memory is sharing this honor with me, and of course, so is the memory of my mother, who had the courage to send an 11-year-old 6,000 miles halfway across the world to save his life. I wish to express my thanks to my wife, Diane, for 62 years of a loving married life, who always supported me in my professional career, wherever it took me. To my 3 sons, Bill, Paul, and Jim, who for many years joined me in my love for sailing and skiing. Their 2 beautiful wives, Laura and Pam, and of course, our 4 grandchildren, Eli, Max, Allison, and Theo, 2 of them who are here with us this evening. Had I not arrived on your shores, I wouldn't have had the pleasure of seeing them grow up. And last but not least, I'm also grateful to the author, Jeremy Dronfield, for bringing our Holocaust story to your attention. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you to Amir Cohen and the Jewish Federation, and to Cantor Shudrich, and to Rabbi Cantor, to Martin Benz, who's joining us, to David Lima, and anyone I've forgotten. I think we had a guest also from Afua who has signed off. So this is very important that we're gathering here, although it's virtual. And I would like to also make a mention of all of the students that I see here. This is the largest Zoom conference I think I've ever been part of. There are 3 pages of participants. I would like to see next year when we have our Yom HaShoah event, this many people coming out for the event to honor this important day of remembrance. So now we turn to the film that we just watched, this clip, and you are probably left with many impressions. If you have had a chance to see it, all of it, a piece of it, or whether you were struggling with the technology. This is the story of one man who left from Vienna, not at his will, who is separated from his family, and who now recently has a book that was written about his survival, his new life, those who came with him, and those who were left behind. This is a story that is part of a larger pattern, and I'd like to open this up to any questions or impressions that people may have. I think that Manya Bark would like to begin.
Okay, hi. Hi, Ilana.
Hi.
After watching this, the one thing that really struck me was how quickly neighbors turned Gustav the father in. He didn't even have time to turn himself into the police after he was wanted, but his neighbors, and that, you know, they'd grown up for generations in Vienna. He had a store, upholstery store. It just struck me how quickly people that you knew turned you in. What are your thoughts? What are your comments on that? And is Vienna a particular example of that?
So I believe that Vienna is an example of a place where neighbors were ready to hand over their neighbors, a place where there was a growing anti-Semitism from the end of the 19th century that continued to blossom before the First World War, into the First World War, and after the First World War. And I believe that while Vienna was unique in this capacity, we also see that throughout Europe, there are these strong bonds between neighbors, and yet we also see fear. And we see that neighbors far too often turned over their neighbors, and in an instant. So with the case of Vienna and the case of Kleinman, this is what he expresses. And it's actually quite timely that we think about these human interactions and these human relationships, especially in the situation that we find ourselves in now.
Thank you.
Ilana and perhaps Susan Barnett, could you speak to the local of how the Kleinman family is connected to us here in New Bedford?
Is this a question for I am not, Susan Barnett maybe can answer that, but I am not familiar with this.
Susan,
can you hear me?
We can hear you, Susan, yes.
Hi, you asked me how the Barnett family was connected to Kurt Kleinman. As it explained in the book that was written about Kurt's family, Kurt was sent by his mother at, I think it was 11 years old, to Judge Barnett's family in New Bedford. Judge Barnett lived on Roach Street with 3 of his sisters, and a friend of Kurt's mother contacted her, they were friends, and asked if the family would take in Kurt, and they were very, very happy to take in Kurt. He came to New Bedford, he fit right into the community, and he grew up here, and he is still a very, very beloved member of our family. His family did come over to visit him after the war. His mother and sister died in the camps, but his brothers and his brother and sister lived, and they did come here and lived very long lives.
His brother and his father. Yes.
Yes, his brother and his father.
And his sister and his mother were murdered in a place called Mali Trossenet, one of the extermination sites actually that we honored in our memory at the beginning of tonight's program.
And his older sister went to England to work when she was 16, and she did get married there and came to the United States and lived till she was 94. And Kurt is now a ripe old 90 years old.
Wonderful.
I want to make sure that the connection is understood for everybody on the call. Kurt was supposed to be with us today and speak to us at this time following what would have been a wet ceremony at the monument. Notice on the list of participants that there is a Kleinman or the Kleinman family, and if they are, perhaps Ilana, you could speak to them. Maybe if they are in fact part of the family, maybe they want to share a word to us, if they are in fact family.
Yes.
Hi, Amir. This is Paul Kleinman. So I'm the middle child of Kurt. So Kurt and Diane had 3 children. Unfortunately, I've been on my dad. The technology is a challenge for him. So he was able to get on the Zoom, but not the audio. And so, right, unfortunately, he's not able to join us right now. But yes, I mean, you know, the Barnetts, the judge and his whole family. I mean, the judge was a law practice with his brother, Philip Barnett. And Philip had 2 children. Susan's husband, David, was Philip Barnett's son, who was almost like a brother to my dad because the two brothers lived next to each other on Roach Street for a period of time. So, I mean, you know, the Barnetts were incredible. I mean, the judge raised my father, you know, not as a son because his father, as you mentioned, survived the war, but basically, you know, treated him as their own. And then the judge had, you know, for his sisters, you know, during their different careers, they came back and lived with them at Roach Street. So, you know, my dad had amazing memories. My dad, you know, the judge and his brother helped found Camp Avoda in Middleborough, Massachusetts, which is a Jewish boys camp, which is still around today. Almost, it's going to be celebrating, I think, almost his 90th birthday. My dad went to Avoda, and all three of us, my two brothers and myself, went to Avoda, and my son, who's now 18, has gone to Avoda since he was 8. And he's now a counselor there, and we're hoping camp will open up this summer. We're still not sure yet. And then my daughter has gone to Camp Pembroke, which is the sister camp, you know, in Pembroke, Mass, since she was 8, and she's 16 now. So we have fond memories of coming up to New Bedford for for Passover, for the High Holy Days, you know, we're just so very fortunate. I mean, as you heard, I mean, the book is actually very focused on my uncle and my grandfather and their journey through the Holocaust. And, you know, because of my grandmother, my father was, you know, so fortunate to be sent to the United States with the Joint Distribution Committee. And just a quick story, but my father was able to find, through, I guess, the Jewish Family or Jewish Children's Bureau in New York, found some of the original letters going back between the social worker and the judge. And they're very endearing. The social worker keeps asking how the boy is doing, and the judge says, "I got it. I don't need to hear from you anymore. The boy's fine." And the social worker wrote back, "Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Barnett, you don't understand. It's my job." And he wrote back, "I'm sorry, you don't understand." So it's just some amazing stories that we've been able to find. You know, I'm very fortunate that, you know, my father, as Susan mentioned, is 90 and my mom is 86, that they're now in a retirement community in New Jersey in lockdown mode. But, you know, we're very fortunate to still have them with us.
Mm-hmm. I want to say one more thing. Over the years, we've all been told an awful lot about Kurt's life here in New Bedford. And one thing I've always felt very good about was that the entire community welcomed Kurt when he came here as a child. He said he never at any time did he feel anything but a warm welcome from the entire community, the Jewish people and others. And being in New Bedford, he's always said how much it has meant to all of him. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to the Kleiman family for speaking. And are there any other questions or comments that anyone wants to maybe address to the Kleiman family or to Susan, or any comments, questions? I see some of my students here that I know had some questions last time we spoke.
Ilana.
Don't be shy. Yes, hi, Marcia.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering if Kurt spoke publicly about his experience as an adult.
So, who would like to answer that question? So I know I'm more of the background research, historical part.
Is Kurt's son there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. So it's interesting that my dad, until he really retired, you know, he had a career in pharmacy for over 40 years. He was the director of pharmacy at Montefiore Hospital in New York City for 30. And, you know, he retired in his early 60s. It wasn't until basically his retirement, he had received a few awards from his the Pharmacy Association that he was a part of, and then started to speak about kind of his story. There's also the kinder transport, which, my dad wasn't really part of the kinder transport because I was really from, Austria and Germany to London, England. He was put on a boat with just 2 other children out of Lisbon to come to the United States. But through the kinder transport, he had started to speak publicly, and now he has spoken, at a number of synagogues and has given a number of speeches since. But as we grew up, it really wasn't, it wasn't part of, a part of the story of us growing up. But we knew the history, but he did not talk about it very much.
Thank you.
It is also important to note that Kurt was one of the very last to manage to get out of the Nazi Greater German Reich at this time. He left, I believe it was March of 1941, so the spring of 1941, and this is directly in the beginning of the right as the final solution is coming together. And at this point, the deportations of Jews have begun to move to the east from Vienna. And these are some of the last transports of immigrants. So immigration transports running simultaneously. And he was one of the last to leave, as you heard, through Portugal. So it is quite miraculous to hear a story of someone who gets out of Vienna in the spring of 1941. Everyone else, there were about 50,000 Jews that still remained in Vienna at this time who would, in the next 15 months, meet their fate at one of the concentration camps or death camps. Any other comments? Yeah. Yes. Amir?
Yeah, I just had I had a comment and then I had a question. Because Mr. Clement said that there were letters that were that go back to like when the judge and stuff like that. Are those letters like still are they in display anywhere in New York City? Are they viewable anywhere to the public, or is that like private information?
Great
question. I think the files are part of my dad's private collection. I don't think there's anything that private that I could talk to him about, maybe how we could share some of those. It was, part of his investigation once he got involved with the Kinder Transport Organization, that, he was able to be in touch with the Jewish Children's Bureau of New York City. And they actually had the hard copy file that they had kept on him. So I can talk to my dad to see if we can, get some copies of those letters to share with you guys.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Kurt told me that he has the lederhosen that he wore when he traveled from Vienna to his home to New Bedford is on display at a museum in Washington.
Yeah. So for the students, kind of a quick funny story. So my dad must have only been here a month or two, and you talked about the spring. So the judge played hooky one day from school and took him fishing in New Bedford. I'm not sure exactly where they were, at Payton Harbor, but anyway, a local newspaper took a picture of him and the judge fishing, and it showed up on the cover, I think, or on the insert of the newspaper the next day. Which I don't know if he had told his teacher he was sick or whatever, but he still tells that story of playing hooky and ending up on the cover of the local New Bedford newspaper.
I remember that story, yes.
Wow.
So, Max, I'd like to ask, do you know if your father might be willing to speak with us at another time?
Yeah, absolutely. My dad, he's dealing with a few health issues right now, but absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, we weren't, this COVID thing happened fast, and so they're in lockdown mode. So he's got Wi-Fi in his apartment, and we got him an iPhone finally. But I wasn't able to get all his technology set up, as well before all this lockdown happened. So and we're still trying to teach him how to use the smartphone. So, but I'm sure he'd be happy to. He could definitely try to get him on a call. We do FaceTime with him, but we haven't been able to get Zoom working for him yet.
Thank you.
Ilana, with your permission, I want to use this opportunity to remind people that one of the few things that we haven't canceled, you may not know that it's scheduled, but we were forced to cancel just about everything that had to do with gathering. But a few months ago, we were scheduled way ahead a one-woman's performance, which takes place on Aha Night, Thursday in November, which is a Holocaust theme, a one-woman play, and it's closest date possible to Kristallnacht. As you guys know, Cindy had technical difficulties and didn't come on to the call, but our very robust Holocaust committee at the Federation is always active, and we commemorate 3 dates every year. One of them is, of course, Yom HaShoah, which was earlier in the week. The other is Kristallnacht, which takes place in November. And the third, which is a relatively new international date of Holocaust recognition, we kind of launched into that one with two programs. One was when we had Ed Asner visit us at the Zeiterion Theater, and the other when we did the participation in the global event of Who Will Write Our History. So right now, I just want to have you remember that hopefully by November, when Aha Night is scheduled to have that particular performance, the Federation has partnered with Aha Night and with the Whaling Museum, and we should have a program in person where I hope to see all of you. At some point during this call, we've had more than 60 different participants, and 50-something of them pretty much survived throughout the whole hour. Even I apologize, it was supposed to be 45 minutes, but I'm grateful for everything that was extended. So I wanna add this hope of us having actual in-person programs, and of course, I speak for Cindy and the committee to say that we are, and we will always continue to be committed to the education and the memory of, and we will continue to be expansive in including as many communities as possible, whether it's students, whether it's teachers, whether it's people of all religions. This is a great opportunity for us to cross every barrier. Just like COVID-19 doesn't have any barriers in terms of where it struck, the Nazis did not have any limitations on who they chose to murder during the Holocaust, and are inclusive and inviting to all of those, and all of those who have connections to anyone in that respect. So I wanted to use this to share this with everyone, and I hope in November, if not sooner for something else, to see all of you